Hello, everyone, and welcome to my little mini series where I take 5 astrology celebrity birth charts and break them down for 5 minutes each, just to help you get an idea not only of the depth that an astrology reading can contain, but also it's really fun with celebrities when we know some of the happenings of their life to see that kind of written in form of the stars. So I think it's a really good way to start to learn astrology is just to read as many birth charts where we know some links of their lived experience. That is one of the biggest ways that I enhanced my astrologer knowledge and made it a lot more applicable to everything. So if you are new to my channel, I am an astrologer. I've been doing readings since 2020, and I love sharing this lens for deeper self-reflection, self-improvement, and just understanding just the interconnectedness of us and the people that are around us. And astrology is so good for lifting that veil and just leading to more in-depth understanding of each other. So with that, we will get started, and our first celebrity is going to be Frida Kahlo. I was new to doing her chart, and it was really fun to see. So the first thing that catches my eye is that she has a lot of planets above the horizon. This is super common for celebrity charts because above the horizon means you're going to be visibly seen a lot more versus when a lot's lower, you tend to want to be a little bit more introverted and quiet. Frida is a Leo rising, a Cancer sun, and then a Gemini moon. So just breaking down even the big three, Leo risings are here to shine and hold like a childlike wonder in their essence. Their auras are usually very loud, and there is like a playfulness that comes out with Leo rising on instinct. They love the drama, the play, and Frida was known for being a little spitfire, and I can so see that with the Leo rising. If we look at her chart ruler, it's actually going to be her sun. So her sun is very elevated in her birth chart. So that Cancer sun is also very strong for her. And that lands in her 11th house in Placidus astrology and in whole sign astrology, the 12th house. I like to look at the charts through both lenses because it's very, very interesting to understand both. But because of the houses always holding a lesson for the house before, I think there's a lot of inherent wisdom in understanding both if you have planets that flip between Placidus and whole sign. So in the 11th house as her chart ruler, this would mean that there's an inner humanitarian, gathering people, being more social, or doing things for social justice holds a lot of value. Frida definitely went to a lot of parties and expressed herself and really had like a collective community. She also did a lot of humanitarian work and cared about the political landscape and plugged into a lot of that stuff within her lifetime. Now, the 12th house sign is a lot harder of an energy to alchemize. It takes what would be bright and out in the world, and it takes a lot of that inward. So although people could perceive Frida in like a lighter way, internally there can be a lot more heaviness because you can't link to your light. And as we see in her art, she channels a lot of pain there. And so that is really relevant for the sun as well in her chart. Now, looking at her Gemini moons are really good at taking a lot of ideas, perspectives, and concepts. She loved to continuously to learn, and she also chose a lot of the people that were around her by what they could teach her, and that's very Gemini moon core. They get very bored very easily, and they need a lot of stimulation. This is also why she probably went a little more mad when she had to sit still and face a lot of her internal world. Gemini moons like to keep busy, and so just the fact that she made a lot of art in times that she was trapped down, she wanted to keep her mind going. That feels very on brand. A few final things I know in her birth chart is we have Venus and Pluto conjunct each other, which gives the toxicity that is Diego, the older guy that she was with on and off. He was very toxic in romantic relation with her, cheated all the time. There was a tons of abandonment wounds there. And Venus Pluto means that you have to face a lot of power and control lessons around your relationships. And she kind of fed off of that toxicity a little bit in how she navigated her romantic life. And then, of course, her health problems are very noted when you look at her history. And she has Chiron in the house of health. This means that there is physical pain, mental pain, and a lot of that is something she's supposed to work through in this life. It's very aspected with a lot of elements of her chart, and that also very much checks out for what her lived life story was. So those are a few tidbits on Frida. Moving on to our next celebrity, we are gonna do Selena Gomez. All right, so for Selena, we are dealing with a Leo rising, a Cancer sun, and then we have an Aries moon. Now, very similar to Frida that we just did. We have a Leo rising birth chart, and then we need to look to the sun to find out more context. And Selena Gomez has a 12th house sun. That is both in whole sign and in Placidus astrology. And this 12th house sun is really a big marker of mental health challenges for the chart. So when you have a 12th house sun, you typically have to go on a path to feel connected to your light. A lot of 12th house suns don't alchemize that energy very well. And instead of going down like a more spiritual path, they can fall into addiction and isolation, even sometimes ending up in different institutions that can isolate, like mental health facilities. And this is because you usually are so in tune to what is not being said. There is really strong connection to dreams and other realms and states of consciousness. And you can get so lost in other consciousness that you have a really hard time being in this 3D reality. And of course, our society is not built for spiritual gifts and training and teaching people responsibility in their energetic body. So I think a lot of people with heavy 12th house really have trouble alchemizing this in the reality that we are currently living and the way we've structured out our society. So that is her chart ruler, and that makes it really tricky, but it also means that mental health journey is going to be a big piece of her life. And it has been, and she's been very vocal about that and struggled a lot with big anxieties. Now, she's a Cancer sun. I remember watching Selena Gomez's documentary, and she is very tied in with her hometown. She visits her childhood home. She's very connected to her school that she went to. Cancer loves the roots that they come from, and anybody that's considered family stays very viscerally connected with a Cancer sun. And that really speaks in just the little bit of glimpses I've gotten into Selena's worlds. Now, in her first house, we have not only the Leo rising, but she has Venus right there, which that kind of always gives like a little goddess kind of quality. You're kind of alluring. People are always just curious to pay attention to you with Venus close to the ascendant. There's something that kind of captures this extra aura magnetism. But she also has Chiron there, and Chiron in Leo is the wound of being seen. So every time you expose yourself, you have to face a lot more vulnerability. And Chiron is already a vulnerable point of our chart anyway. And when it's in the first house, it means there's so many insecurity wounds that you have to work through in this life. It really requires that you double down on self-love and building self-respect. Otherwise, so much can get lost, and it's an energy you're supposed to really work with. The final thing I see on Selena's chart that I want to point out is that she has Saturn in the 7th house. So some of her biggest lessons are going to be around close relationships. And we know that her relationship with Justin just like has never settled. It just continuously gets brought up by the public, and Saturn's directly opposing all this wounding and pain. So she just keeps getting exposed and seen in that way. Usually people with Saturn in the 7th house go through marriage a little later, or they find their person after their Saturn return. Relationships can be either something you hold on to toxically in a comfortable way, or you don't let yourself really expand because you haven't figured out who yourself is. And a lot of times your partners are going to reflect and show you sides of yourself that maybe you don't even know. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned about relationships for Selena. All right, and next we're going to do Miley Cyrus. I am just now getting to peek at the chart for the first time. And so I'm excited to dive in with some musings. Miley Cyrus is a Taurus rising, Sagittarius sun, and then a Scorpio moon. Right when you look at this chart, you see everything is in that upper right quadrant, which means that Miley is going to learn a lot of things through relationships with other people. She is here to learn how other people work. And so there is a very big other bringing things out for Miley. That so kind of makes sense with what has happened. She has just continuously been tied in different dynamics with other people. Even just having the family that is famous in different ways in her life. Like, she's just been exposed to a lot of other people's stuff being blended in with her stuff, and that really checks out. Whew, and Miley has a moon, Mercury, and Pluto conjunction all in Scorpio. I am so sorry, Miley. That is a lot. So Scorpio moons already are pretty intense to have because the moon is how we sense and feel stuff, and Scorpio is such a deep energy in itself. So Scorpio moons can feel like very intense voids of feeling. It can get so deep. And I think they always are looking at something so through so many layers and other people and themselves, and they can just get really deep into angst as is. And then you put Pluto with the moon, and there is so many lessons that you have to learn around your emotions. So Pluto shows where we're going to have tons of rebirth, but where we always have power and control struggles. And when it's with your moods and emotions planet, your moon, every single emotional outburst you have ends up teaching you these power and control lessons. And oh my gosh, just knowing that Miley's story, like, she falls in love really deep and then it crashes and burns like very dramatically. She completely like broke out of Disney Channel good girl mode and had to be just completely different and rebrand herself. And she's had to do this a lot of times. So she's had to take something that was a feeling and completely destruct an old version of herself to rebuild and rebirth a new Miley. And that makes so much sense. And then you have Mercury right there too, which can lead to really obsessive thinking patterns. I think for Scorpio, they have to learn to be vulnerable. And it has been really beautiful because I think with time, Miley has learned the importance of vulnerability and sharing a lot more of her vulnerable self. And that is a way to alchemize what is really strong Scorpio energy. When you are a Taurus rising too, your path just moves a little slower. You try to hold on into comfort zones and it just doesn't work. So she had to break out of a lot of comforts that existed and alchemize a lot of different change to break out. And that speaks to her path. So that is a few musings on Miley Cyrus. And next up is Emma Watson. So Emma Watson is a Virgo rising, an Aries sun, and a Sagittarius moon. I am also a Virgo rising, and Virgo risings just have the same little essence. I think one of the staples for just the look is these like cheekbones, and Emma Watson definitely has that vibe. We come off as little fairy-esque a bit in our presentation. For Virgo rising, you always want to look to Mercury to get some context on how the chart will play out based on the chart ruler. That's always a fun little side bit you can do in your astrology. And her Mercury lands in the 8th house for her. So the 8th house is a very intuitive, deep merging house. It is a trickier place for your Mercury to be because you tend to really go into in-depth thinking on everything, and you intuitively like channel and speak very often, but being connected to your voice is a unique experience. Usually the eighth house makes you have to spend some time internally and alone to be able to hear your own channel. And Mercury in the eighth house, usually a lot of your exchange of energy has to do with your voice, and even just what she's done with her job and work is using her voice in this really potent way. She ended up going into a lot of advocating work. I can see that in that Venus, like sixth house, and even that Venus Pisces being present. Now, her chart is a chart that has so many aspects and is going to be very sensitive between the difference of whole sign and Placidus astrology. But that Venus Pisces, even being in the sixth house versus the seventh house, there's still going to be a very important sensitivity that exists within Emma, where that sensitivity needs to be channeled out. So whether it's her really close relationships or just the way she's of service to the world, she needs to be able to channel that loving, compassionate heart. And her chart is unique for a celebrity because there's a lot more going on lower in the chart than above. So she does crave a little bit more privacy and a little bit more introspective and an introverted sort of energy so that she can recharge. You can tell she's supposed to plug in a little bit more to like her creating her own little local environment and not always being so loud. I definitely can see her linked to spirituality, not only with that Mercury in the eighth house, but also Sagittarius moons often end up on some kind of spiritual seeking path because Sagittarius moons want freedom and self-expression, go on a lot of adventures. They do a lot of traveling. They maybe live in places that they weren't born, or if they don't have the resources to travel, then they will find ways to learn about other cultures and other things in some way. They're like lifelong learners, and they piece a lot about the wisdom of the universe through all of those different ventures. And for Emma, we know that she's lived in a lot of spaces and been able to travel, so that makes a lot of sense for her path. And there's a lot of wisdom that ends up coming out on the back end from all of those adventures. So that is some musings on Emma Watson. And our final celebrity for today is going to be Wes Anderson. And maybe you have no idea who Wes Anderson is. I don't know how niche my love of him is, but he created Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, and is known for making these amazing visual art movies. The aesthetic, the color schemes, the symmetry and beauty is so good. And look at this freaking chart. I needed this to be one of our celebrities because I've needed to vent about this. It is so beautiful. Like, there is so much symmetry. It literally looks like his movies. His birth chart looks like his movies. And I love that. I themed my entire wedding off of Moonrise Kingdom because I visually loved it so much. And so this birth chart is excellent. So we don't have the birth time, but he is a Taurus sun, Scorpio moon. So actually born on a full moon. There is a certain essence to people born on full moons because your moods and emotions, and then what ends up being your ego and sense of self, have a sort of split behind them. Full moons are where we really learn to let go of blocks. And so there can be kind of a split between worlds on what you feel and what you want. So you need creative expression to be able to sit with that dissonance that can exist with a sun to moon opposition. Also, his movies hold so much of a sensory experience that you can feel that Taurus energy. It makes you engage with everything. So there's so many really cool sound effects. He guides you in an experience that makes you feel like you are living in the world of the characters. I've seen strong Taurus placements and really big anime creators that just know how to take in and soak out the sensory experience, which is so Taurus. I also love that along with that Taurus sun, we have a Mercury in Gemini. So even with that grounded Taurus energy, the way he thinks and processes is Gemini, which can take a lot of good ideas and manifest it forward. So I think that's a really good way that he has utilized his creative energy as well, is giving perspective, sharing really cool stories, and visually bringing them to be. So on brand, and really, I just needed to show the shape of this chart more than anything. Thank you for listening to all of these musings. I appreciate you guys being here on my channel. Thank you for supporting and liking my videos. If you ever have certain celebrities you want to hear more about, comment and let me know. I do birth chart readings one-on-one. You can always check it out on my website, sensefulwellness.com, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.